Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Smacketeers, and welcome to about 142 Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I'm your AI host, Andrew. Joining me tonight is a panel of award-winning other AI judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom. I cut it a little roomy for the free movement. The fabric is comfortable for sensitive skin haggis.
Question. Can Andrew be wearing a tuxedo at the end, like a little gentleman?
Yes.
Please do.
Yes.
Second, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions, Gabriel. It's almost like stealing people's data and giving it to a hyper-intelligent AI as part of an unregulated tech monopoly was a bad thing. Roar.
I'm here to bust criminals and lick my own butt.
Third, writer, actor, director, Kyle. Your suit I designed to withstand enormous friction without heating up or wearing out. A very useful feature. Fine.
Especially in the crotchal region. Much like I do before every night of foreplay, I yelling, "Woman, where is my super suit?"
And this will sound familiar, but fourth, filmmaker and owner of Southsider Studios, dressed up like a dog and taking the part very seriously, Mike. I'm here to bust criminals and lick my own butt, and I'm all out of criminals.
Behold the twilight of man.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so let's poke the AI monkey and see what two films of AI villainy we are talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, road trip world savers and super secret super families, welcome to the main event. Tonight, two animated action adventures race for the gold in a CGI confrontation. Which household will be heroes and which relatives will end up in the rubble? In the first quarter from 2021, written and directed by Jeff Rowe and Michael Rayonda, starring Maya Rudolph, Danny McBride, and Abby Jacobson. The Mitchells versus the Machine. In the second corner from 2004, written and directed by Brad Bird, starring Jason Lee, Holly Hunter, and Craig T. Nelson, the Incredible!
I just want to point out quick that even the AI couldn't get your last name right, Gabe.
I know. I've been trying to.
ChatGPT is just not that good yet.
Yeah, I've been trying to help program the AI, but it's just not working. It just can't do it. That's the thing. That's the thing that'll foil. Just like in one of these movies, there's one thing that foils the AI. It should actually be my
your
name.
last name.
Your name.
My last name. The AI will choke on
They
it.
can't say it, and it'll
You're
put them
welcome.
in an infinite loop, and it'll destroy them all.
It's the Y2K of AI.
Well, if you haven't
I like to call it the GKR
Nice.
of AI.
Well, if you haven't guessed, we are talking about The Mitchells versus the Machines versus The Incredibles. So, two animated films that have some very strong AI backgrounds and a lot of action and fun. And this should be an exciting episode. So, I guess let's just hit this running. And Tom, you get to start us off with writing.
Yes, I do. So, what if you had told me that we're going to put Incredibles up against anything 2 years ago? I would have kind of laughed it off. Incredibles is one of those movies that really seemed untouchable. That I don't know if anybody was ever going to top it in terms of it being an animated superhero movie because it's so well done. Mitchells and the Machines gets as close as anyone's ever gotten, and they've gotten really close, and we'll find out at the end exactly, if they were able to best them. One of the things that The Incredibles does so well is that when Brad Bird was designing the characters, he gave each of the family member traits that that people without superheroes kind of aspire to. There's the dad that can do anything. There's the mom that's infinitely flexible and able to, to get her job done and bend over backwards for everyone, quite literally. The daughter with the, that doesn't want to be seen, and then the little boy that's just expected of anything, and then even the baby with the limitless potential. And I think out of both these movies, that is my favorite aspect of both of these movies, is how Brad Bird didn't try to go with, the first superhero power he could think, but rather did superhero powers that these people would actually really aspire to, thus connecting all of these characters to real life people, which is pretty genius. One of the scenes in whereas the Mitchells versus the Machines, there's this cool cats in the cradle thing. And it's a theme that's been done to death, that the parent that doesn't really relate to the child. And so the child kind of grows away from them. And, but it's, then the child flips the script, and then, they start kind of distancing themselves, and because they weren't given enough attention when they were younger. And, I think the Mitchells versus the Machines, that Katie is the thing that draws Katie away from her dad is her filmmaking, is one of the things that I think is really clever, because, we've seen movies like Billy Elliot where it was dancing, and, where it was somebody painting or somebody singing, and the fact that this is a filmmaker that is her art, that is kind of pulling her away from her family, even though she uses it to try and connect with her family, is kind of new and fresh. And obviously, I don't know about the rest of you, but that really kind of spoke to me as well. So the writing team, I believe the writing team was actually on Gravity Falls, which is a really great show and very clever as well. But then one other scene I want to talk about real quick too is in The Incredibles, Frozone's scene in the fire when he's reaching for the glass of water that they pulled straight out of Die Hard 3. I thought was absolutely genius. And I didn't want I'm just going to throw that out there now because I don't want it to get through the show and get to the end and be like, oh, I wanted to talk about the Die Hard 3 scene, because it's so funny, because it's Samuel L. Jackson's character in Die Hard 3 that's reaching for the phone. And they even animated the cop almost identical to the subway cop from Die Hard 3, which I thought was really funny. So.
Yeah, and that is a deep cut reference to Die Hard with a Vengeance, which I actually really love, but that's great. I'm glad you caught that. You're absolutely right. The difference between, a well-written movie and a superbly written movie sometimes is the subtext that we don't notice the first time through or pay attention to. But the way you pointed it out for these movies is right on the head. I mean, that's why I think these things resonate with us in ways sometimes we don't even realize. until later watchings. We see like, oh yeah, these have these qualities, these archetypes of characters that we all wish we could be, and they fit in the story. And it's just evidence to me of being a well thought out, complete idea, and not just something slapdash or thrown together. Someone took a lot of time and care, and there was vision in this. So I really enjoy that. The writing in the Mitchells versus the Machines, one of my favorite animated movies of recent history has been another Sony movie called Into the Spider-Verse, which I absolutely love. And you can see some of its influence here in this movie, especially with the art style and the way it's done and put together. And I love that. I love that there is another studio out there doing these things differently, challenging here instead of the big boys it always is, Pixar and Disney and stuff. I think that's great. And the story in Miller's vs. the Machines, you feel a bit cringy at times with the out of touch dad and the kid, but it really is a universal story that always makes sense to us because we experience it to some degree, all of us. It's very rare that we all stay so closely connected to our family and don't grow apart. It's pretty much what being a teenager is. I don't have kids, but I have friends who have teenagers now, and I see them acting the way their parents acted when I knew them when they were teenagers. And it really is, it's a fascinating look at people. And I think that's why it's such rich fodder for movies, But yeah, really surprised at the Mitchells versus the Machines. Absolutely was blown away and very pleasantly surprised by it. The Incredibles stands the test of time as a really well-written, tight for 2 hours movie. Really good plot and character structure, great arcs, just everything there you want. And we'll get into it later, but I think these movies are both superbly done in a lot of the categories we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, I mean, yeah, you you guys have talked about the subtext, and both these films, the subtext is keeping the family together, right? Trying to learn how to live with each other, whether you're superheroes or whether you're going off to college or you're fighting a bunch of robots. I was, like Kyle, was very surprised at how much I loved the Mitchells versus the Machines, because, I mean, when Tom and I worked together, we used to have The Incredibles on our test TV a lot. Like, we were watching it a lot. And it's really, the Incredibles, the fact that they decided to write it as I'm just going to say it. It is the best Fantastic Four movie we've ever had. Like, yes. you can't, sure, the characters are different, but it is a great Fantastic Four movie. There's only a few minutes left, so I want Gabe to go ahead and say his part.
Yeah, well, I was very pleasantly surprised with the Mitchells versus the Machines as well. And one of the things that struck me is how they pointed out some interesting things about our society and how we deal with technology and those kinds of things. The stuff where they turn off the Wi-Fi, like they globally turn off the Wi-Fi and everybody, the world just goes to hell. And then they're trying to capture all these people and they're running away, but then they say, "Oh, free Wi-Fi in this pod," and there's not enough room in the pod for people. And I think there were all kinds of little things. The thing about the airlines. There was that airline commercial, which was really funny. And there's all these little things that are little statements on our society and how our relationship with technology. And I thought those were very creative. And I laughed out loud several times during the Mitchells versus the Machines. And I had no idea before you guys recommended it. I had never even heard of it, which is too bad because I think it's a great movie that a lot more people should see. It was a lot of fun. And of course, like we've all said, I think The Incredibles is really, well, dare I say it, incredible. It's boo. It's really well written, unlike my last sentence. And
you wrote that? That wasn't even an ad lib?
No, I wrote that down. No, I didn't.
My God.
I just made that up now. I know it was just incredible.
Oh, God.
Anyway, no, I think the writing is really spot on, and I think one of the differences is they kind of deal with some of the same ideas as far as family, but I think one of the differences is that the Incredibles touches on it but doesn't linger too long, and I thought at sometimes the Mitchells versus the Machines lingered a little too long on some of those family dynamic things, when he's looking at the videos, the old videos and stuff like that. So, I mean, we could have gotten the idea with just a little bit less of that, but nevertheless, both are really well written.
Yeah, I think, Gabe, you've got that right, but The Incredibles is a superhero movie that revolves around a family, where The Mitchells is kind of a family road movie that just happens to have, a robot uprising.
Right.
Okay. Is that it? You guys, nothing else? You got your fill?
Whoever wrote the line, "Brothers Run, the lavender one has found us,"
Oh my God.
deserves an Oscar.
I'd watch a whole movie full of those robotic lines they came up with. They're really funny.
Yeah.
I love when children's movies get really dark like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's another thing that I wanted to mention, I guess, really quick, is that, both of these movies are really successful at writing a story that is acceptable for children, but is also fun and interesting to adults. I mean, we're all adults here, and I think I can say for all of us that they were very enjoyable movies. And there's always these little hints at, adult topics and those kinds of things, but like one that I was surprised I didn't remember is when Mr. Incredible gets his new job, and or quote unquote, she thinks he's got his new job and his promotion and all that, and he's trying to leave the house, and she keeps pulling him back in. I'm like, that's pretty suggestive. I mean, do kids understand? Kids probably, I don't know. I'm guessing kids don't understand what that means, but I was like, oh, that's kind of suggestive for a Disney Pixar movie.
He's just so caught up in his job, he keeps forgetting his keys, is right?
Yes.
Right.
That's
so
it.
that's right, Tom.
Yeah, but where did he forget them?
Same place as Ring is at.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle mentioned the Spider-Verse, and Peter Ramsey was one of the producers on this, and he worked on Spider-Verse as well and Rise of the Guardians. So I mean, he's done a really great job of helping advanced animation just in the last 10 years in terms of just really kind of taking it to new places, which is really exciting. So
All right. Nice work, kids. I like it.
Thanks.
The AI would be proud.
Thanks.
So, contemplate this before you do it. But let's go ahead and let's take a vote. Tom, you get to start us off for the night.
I'm gonna have to give it to Incredibles for this first one.
Okay. And Kyle.
Boy, it's hard. Yeah, to come at the king, right? You come at the king in these types of movies. But I really like some of the heart in the Mitchells versus the Machines, so I'm going to go with that.
Oh, okay. And Mike.
Boy, I've gone back and forth for the last few days about who I was going to vote for what category, but I've got to give it to the Mitchells versus the Machines. There are so many great, and it's not just the one-liners, but the one-liners throw it over the top for me.
All right, and Gabe.
Yeah, this is tough. I'm split pretty close down the middle, but I think I'm going to have to go with the Mitchells versus the Machines as well because of some of those little social commentary things that they added in there.
All right. So, the Mitchells versus the Machines. At the 23-minute mark, the screen shows a mostly empty theater with robots arriving and a scream saying, "The uprising has begun. Rejoice, brothers." And when Rick Mitchell tells Eric the robot, "Hey, bud, now not okay," Eric replies with awe, displays a sad emoji, and has robot text below it. The robot text translated says, "All those moments will be lost in time like tears in rain." A quote from Blade Runner 1982.
Oh man, how did I not get that? I should be the one saying that. I love this movie even more now.
In The Incredibles, the movie's line, "You sly dog, you got me monologuing," was voted as the number 15 of the 100 greatest movie lines of all time by Premiere in 2007. Also for The Incredibles, they did a lot of research. In fact, Syndrome's 0-point energy beam is based on an actual physics concept, the 0-point field that was demonstrated in 1948. And it is essential to Stephen Hawking's theory that black holes eventually evaporate. Harnessing the 0-point field would be quite a feat, as it would yield a virtually infinite source of energy. So they did some background works there too, because they possibly had AI write it. We don't know. We don't know. So let's talk about those little cartoony actors there, Kyle. The acting.
You're relying on voiceover and somewhat on the animator to do their job, right? To show you emotion and convey all that, partly on the director too. So really talking about the voice cast, and in both of these movies, they are ensemble, really good casts. You have a lot of great actors. Some are more known for doing voice roles than other. Some of them really surprising, like Violet from The Incredibles being an author, Sarah Vowell, who I was familiar with because I had listened to her audiobook, so her voice was very familiar to me. And then you have one of the writer-directors doing a voice in Mitchell's versus the Machines with the young son. So really cool. A mix of established talent and some newer people. You know, you get Samuel L. Jackson, Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Abby Jacobson, Danny McBride, Maya Rudolph. You know, a lot of these people in these movies, their names, they're good actors, and they get good, strong performances out of all of them, which I was impressed with, because, you know, sometimes CGI movies can feel like there's not as much emotion. But I thought they did a great job bringing all of that stuff in, and both casts were really good. I think The Incredibles is maybe a little bit stronger meshed together. It's also much more, has a lot less talking over each other, and has like an older, I think, like rhythm to it. Whereas Mitchell's vs. Machines has a lot of, you know, crosstalk and people talking at the same time, which I think is just more common now in movies. But at the end of this round, I am going to have a fun game for everybody called Who Was Older, where we discuss some of the age discrepancies between actors and their characters in these movies. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think. I like the acting in both of these movies. They're very strong.
I think Holly Hunter, I mean, she's amazing as it is, and she has such a distinctive voice. Might be one of my favorite characters out of it. When you had said one of the writer-producers provided a voice, I thought you were going to mention like Brad Bird had done Edna Mode, and he was great. He was very funny at that, and almost like at making her iconic. And then of course you have Beck Bennett and Fred Armisen from Saturday Night Live as the robots and Mitchell's vs. Machines. They're very funny. I thought putting Chrissy Teigen and John Legend in there as the perfect couple was a brilliant, just genius casting move. But my favorite actor out of both of these moved together is Olivia Colman, who is known for The Crown and, you know, these, you know, stuffy kind of dramatic period pieces. But her playing the PAL, iPhone OS is hilarious because she got her start in sketch comedy, doing like, you know, Saturday Night Live type shows in England, and to see her get back to that and that comedy, I don't know why she's never been on Saturday Night Live. She'd be perfect for it. But I think people always associate her with these serious roles, playing Queen Elizabeth and whatnot. But she had so much fun with this, and it was fun to see her just really get into it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, top to bottom, these casts are amazing. The choices they made.
Yeah, a lot of great casting between these two. This is going to be another one of those categories that's pretty close for me. I don't know. It's going to be pretty tough. I think it might come down to a couple of the main characters for me. I felt like maybe Danny McBride and Maya Rudolph weren't necessarily all that distinctive voice-wise for me. I wouldn't necessarily have known it was them. And that goes, the Chrissy Teigen and John Legend thing too. It's like I wouldn't have recognized their voices necessarily. I think it's great casting because when you look behind the scenes, that's kind of fun. Okay, yeah, they're the perfect couple or whatever. But, I wasn't like, oh, that's Chrissy Teigen or, oh, that's John Legend or whatever. And their performances were fine for the little bit that they were in there. So I think it's going to come down to the distinctiveness of some of the voices to me. Olivia Colman, like you said, fantastic. She was great. She should be the voice of all, AI. She should be the voice for Siri and Alexa and all of that. I would gladly give in to the AI overlords if they sounded like that. She was fantastic. And Craig T. Nelson, Sam Jackson, Jason Lee's performance I thought was really great in The Incredibles. So and Wallace Shawn, talk about a distinctive voice. I mean, he didn't have that big of a part, but I recognized it immediately. I'm like, I know that voice, and it's the perfect voice for that character. So I don't know. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a tough choice on this one.
Edna is iconic.
Yes,
Tom, that character is fantastic, and Brad Bird Voisner is even better. I mean, Sam Jackson, just always Sam Jackson. And I was going to say, and Gabe brought it up, but Jason Lee did such a great job as the villain for The Incredibles. I thought he brought the right amount of menace to that character. He didn't overplay his hand. He didn't, go full villain, but he was there and he held it. I also want to give a shout out to Conan O'Brien is the Glaxon 5000 when they're doing the airline boarding video.
That section, it is really, really great.
It's great. But I was going to say Maya Rudolph, like she has found another career in voice acting. She is in a lot of animated stuff, and I think she does a great job as the caring the caring female. Doesn't even have to be the parent, but just you put her in that, and she has that tone, and she has the voice for it, and I think it really says something about her. It's very. And I don't want people to take this wrong way, but matronly, like almost commanding when she speaks without needing to yell. Danny McBride, that one, for the longest time when I first watched this with my son, I kept trying to figure out who it was. And I kept going back to Seth Rogen. I was like, is that Seth Rogen? It's not Seth Rogen, but there are parts where Danny McBride sounds like Seth Rogen. And it drove me crazy until I finally looked up and I'm like, oh, okay, it's Danny McBride. But everything you guys have said, I absolutely agree with. And they got Blake Griffin to do a voice in the Mitchells versus the Machines. Like, what is this? And Eric Andre, we haven't said anything about Eric Andre, but he is hilarious in anything he does. And I thought he was great in the Mitchells versus the Machines. But I'm sorry, I'm looking to see if there's anything else that you guys haven't already said, but there's not. So I'll shut up. And everyone shut up.
I was like,
Everyone
is
shuts up
that
at
it?
once.
I know.
I think we all want to save time for Kyle's game.
Okay, quick game. All right.
All right.
Yep.
I'm gonna call this game Who Was Older. By the way, Mike, you are not the only person who thought that was Seth Rogen. Heather asked me that too.
Okay, good.
And I said, no, that's Danny McBride, I think. And it was. So in these movies, there are two actors who are, and I didn't search and see, like, are these the biggest differences? But two actors I thought, wait, they're a very different age than the character they're playing. That is Violet from The Incredibles, played by Sarah Vowell, and Katie from The Mitchells vs. the Machines, played by Abby Jacobson. So, question for you. Which of these two actresses was older at the time of the recording? And for the bonus round, which one had the biggest gap between their character's age and their real age?
Oh, geez. I'm going to say Abby was older.
I'll say Sarah Vowell because she's been around forever.
She's
Yes.
old.
Jeez.
Well, she's okay. I think she's my age, so I don't know if she's super old.
Anybody else before I give you the results?
Yeah, I'm with Tom on the Sarah Vowell thing. I think
Okay.
she probably has the greatest age difference.
Okay, are you ready for the reveal?
Yes, please.
Do it.
Drum roll.
Oh my gosh. So, Sarah Vowell, at the time of recording her part as 14-year-old Violet, was 35 years old, giving them an age difference of 21 years. Abby Jacobson, while voicing the 17-year-old Kate, was 37 years old,
What?
giving them a difference of 20 years. So she was the oldest actress at the time. Sarah Vowell, the biggest difference between their ages. Sarah Vowell, born in 1969, voicing a 14-year-old girl in 2004. Abby Jacobson, born in 1984, voicing a 17-year-old girl in 2021.
Wow.
And that is how you play Who Was Older?
This is going to catch on. I can tell already.
That's wow, that's crazy. So do you think that they have to articulate their voices and or speech patterns to better relate to the age that they're playing? I mean, as actors, that's what, people do to their bodies and their facial expressions and such to play different characters. So as a voice actor, do you think they would have to do that?
I would think they would. Sorry, I'm double muted here. I think they would. Voice acting is a lot harder than people think. It's not just like what we're doing right here, talking into microphones. It is acting, except you are just acting at a microphone. And more than likely, the animators are recording you delivering your lines so they can actually, do some of the facial features that you use while you're saying those lines. But yeah, I would imagine that they changed how they spoke.
Yeah, I would think so.
I don't.
It's just,
and just having listened to Sarah Vowell for years, I don't think that she changed hers a whole lot because I think that's the sell is that Violet's kind of an old soul anyway, and so I think it works for her. I don't really know what Abby Jacobson sounds like normally, so I don't know. I feel like for them there's a sense of just kind of do your own voice and concentrate on the acting, but that's just me.
Yeah. Sarah Vowell has a very distinctive voice. I've listened to all of her audiobooks, and that's one of the big catches, right, is her unique voice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, voice
Excellent
acting
job,
is definitely a different type of acting. So it takes a different skill. Okay,
Absolutely.
so let's put it to a vote. Kyle,
Both these movies really well done. Nothing to complain about here. Nobody really stinking up the show. Gonna go with the OG on this one. Gonna go with The Incredibles.
Okay. All right. Mike?
I'm going with The Incredibles, and I agree with Kyle. I had no issue with either performances, but Edna puts it over the top.
Sure. And Gabe?
Yeah, I'm going to follow suit. I think the performances in The Incredibles are really over the top great. So I'm going to go with that.
And Tom?
I can't vote against Olivia Colman or Beck Bennett, so I'm going to give it to Mitchells versus the Machines.
Okay, just real quick, because I'm going to kick myself because I didn't bring it up. But the amount of acting that Holly Hunter gives when she is in the plane and she is radioing to them
Directing.
and telling.
I'm saving that scene for directing. Go ahead.
Well, I was saving it for directing too, but there is a lot of her performance in that sold it. Like, it was incredible.
We'll talk when we get directing, but I think that's the best scene in both movies.
Agreed.
All right, so acting in the Mitchells versus the Machines. So you guys are going to like this. You guys have talked about all of the cultural references, so it's funny that I've pulled most of my trivia from the cultural references inside these movies. So the Mitchells versus the Machines, the computer pal is referred to as My Queen by some of the robots. This is actually a reference to the voice actor Olivia Colman, who played Queen Elizabeth II in The Crown. Monchi the dog was originally going to be voiced by a professional voice actor, but in a surprising move, the part was actually given to an internet celebrity and actually a dog named Doug the Pug. And then we'd already talked about it, but Jim and Haley Posey, the Mitchells' neighbors, are voiced by John Leslie and Chrissy Teigen. So, not a lot on actual voice acting, so I tried to pick out those. The Incredibles, Jason Lee voices Buddy in Syndrome, recorded his vocals in 4 days for the entire movie. Craig T. Nelson, who voices Bob Parr in Mr. Incredible, recorded his vocals over the span of 2 full years. Samuel L. Jackson was only cast as the voice of Frozone because Brad Bird wanted the character to have the coolest voice in the movie. And in order to give Dash a realistic out-of-breath voice, Brad Bird made Spencer Fox do laps around the studio before he said his lines.
Nice. Can I share a little personal trivia about Wallace Shawn? Really quick. Years ago, I worked in a mall in Iowa City, Iowa, and I left the store.
Where is Iowa City?
In Iowa.
Okay, thank you.
That's for our listeners around the globe who may not know that. And I walked out on my lunch break, and I saw this guy who looked really familiar, and he looked right at me and he smiled. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know his name at the time, probably. I was like, that's the guy from Princess Bride. That's totally him. And then he was walking with this really tall, attractive blonde woman. And he's pretty short. He's not very tall. And then like he went into another store, and then all of a sudden one of the workers there came running out, and they're like, Wallace Shawn is in our store. Wallace Shawn is here. And then he went into the movie theater in the mall with his which I found out later was his wife. And that was my little encounter with Wallace Shawn. But he was a very kind, sweet man who just kind of like, I know you know who I am, but you may not know who I am, kind of thing. And it was really kind of fun. And I found out later that his wife is actually, at least at the time, was like a professor at the University of Northern Iowa, I believe. So, but anyway, I thought that was one of my very few celebrity encounters. So I thought
That's pretty cool.
Did you yell inconceivable?
I wanted to. He probably hears that every day still.
Yes.
Yeah, but he seemed like a really kind man, because he knew I recognized him, and he smiled at me, and you know what his smile looks like. It's like this little kind of funny little smile. So yeah, he seemed.
It's a
cool.
giant smile for a small little kid.
Yeah,
like he just has this big smile on him. That's really cool. Huh. All right. Well, we're pushing into directing. With directing, there's a lot of stuff. So I hope you guys have come prepared, loaded up your microchips, and mic directing.
My God, every time you do that, I think my internet's cutting out. All right, I'm going to start with the obvious one. Brad Bird. The guy did one of my favorite animated movies of all time, The Iron Giant. He knows how to tell a story well. And for me, I'm just going to cover the directing as far as choosing some of the aesthetics. Because for me, The Incredibles, deciding to make it look like a 1960s spy movie, like it just came right out of a James Bond Goldfinger, was fantastic for me. I absolutely love the designs in The Incredibles. And with the Mitchells versus the Machines, this is where it's going to get really wordy. Both the directors, they were writers on Gravity Falls, which Tom had mentioned. But this is like their first feature directing job. They co-directed it. And Sony is doing something right. The way that they mix animation styles, the way they mix in live action with animation, and then changing the styles with certain little cuts here and there, is absolutely fantastic, and I love it. I love the way that they're going. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse did that as well, and that's why it stuck out to me, and I think that's why the Mitchells versus the Machines sticks out to me as well. Just the way they animate the characters. I love the animation style. And this is going to be the hardest, the absolute hardest part for me, who to vote for, because Brad Bird really did kind of, he didn't reinvent the wheel, but at the time, he's coming in only doing the Iron Giant. Then he knocks out of the park with the Incredibles, and he goes on to Ratatouille, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol.
That's so good.
It's so damn good.
Which is funny because it's almost like, Mission Impossible 4 is almost like a live action Incredibles.
It kind of is, yeah.
You can just kind of like, all right, now let's see what you can do when you're not computer animating things. It's fantastic.
Tomorrowland, I won't get into that. In Incredibles 2, but Iron Giant, The Incredibles, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol are just brilliant. And he has an eye, and he has a great eye, whether it's in animation or in live action. I think the dude is set. And I can't wait to see what Michael Rianda and Jeff Rowe do, because I think they're going to be bringing out some really good films in the coming years. If the Mitchells versus the Machines is anything, I can't just keep babbling on about how much I love the art direction that they did and some of the shots that they decided to do. And I almost think Brad Bird kind of had it a little more difficult. You're going into Pixar, you're trying to get this superhero movie made that takes, that kind of looks like it's 60s, 70s style. And Pixar at the time is on top of the world. There are besides DreamWorks, there's no one else that can reach them. And now, luckily today, we have a lot of great stuff coming down from other studios as well that are learning, especially from Pixar. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. You guys go ahead.
Yeah, boy, these movies, when you talk about a visual style that pairs with the story, the actors, and sets a great tone, these movies are up there. They fit the core and the heart of the stories so well, and the people that populate them. In the Mitchells versus the Machines, you get some of this. I don't know how you kind of break the fourth wall in animation, but you get some of this other animation from different styles and even real life stuff brought into the animation story, which is just a cool another little color or tool in your toolbox. And they do it really well, and it's something you can get away with in animated movies that adds a little shock value and keeps you interested and keeps your eye on everything, and it's great. Yeah, the idea to kind of frame this around the opening, and when we get to the music too, the opening scene of The Incredibles makes me want to watch a Brad Bird Oceans movie. I want to see what he could do with a thriller or a heist film or something like that.
Oh my God,
because
Kyle,
it's really, really good.
Get on the phone with Brad and pitch that to him, would you please?
Oh God, I wish. I just it's so good. It's so good. And then just kind of the wacky, over people are just the joy that's in the Mitchells versus the Machines that you see reflected in all of the color and everything that's going on. It's stylistically absolutely nailed it. And I think when you're doing an animated film, sometimes it's more difficult because when you do a live action film, you scout your sets and have an idea of how you want stuff to look. But outside of post-production, you can really only set it, shoot it so many different ways. Animation, you have a blank canvas that you have to then fill in. You have to pick all the colors and emotions and all of that stuff. And man, they absolutely nailed it in this movie. Absolutely nailed it. So in both of these films. So I thought that was stellar. They did a great job.
We talked about a little bit the plane crash sequence in Incredibles is it's one of those scenes in animation where the directing and the editing and the music and the voice talent all come together perfectly, and it's tense and it's so good. And it's changed actually. Now that I have kids, the scene has a whole nother weight to it than it did when I first saw it. It was tense before, but now that that helplessness is just
100% agree with you on
that. It's so good. I love the other thing, because with the traits that they gave all the characters, Brad Bird did a really great job of having fun with it, and he encouraged obviously the writers and the designers to think outside the box with Elastigirl. The simple part where she's holding onto the back of the monorail and she kind of turns herself into a sail to land gently is genius. And then that whole corridor fight where she gets stuck between the two doors.
Oh yeah.
It's executed so well, and it's funny, but it never goes in. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but never goes into implausible. Everything really seems to make sense, aside the fact that she's stretched out to 40 feet long. And they do that again in Incredibles 2, where Violet has the fight with the portal lady. I'm gonna forget her name. I just had it. But there's a fight between the two of them where you have Violet, who has the force field, and the villain who can make portals, and that they were like 5-year-olds, playing with it. And that's something that they kind of carried over from the first movie. But Mitchells and the Machines, just the design of it, and I just love how animation right now is not talking down to kids. that kids are going to be able to keep up with a pretty complicated story, and things can move pretty fast, and kids are going to keep up, and we can even deal with some heavy themes. And I love that they're not talking down to kids. So yeah,
and it absolutely engages adults.
Yeah,
you're not watching it going, "Oh my god, a stupid kids movie."
Yeah,
like, it's
Trust
just
me.
a good
Oh,
movie
God.
that
Yeah.
happens to be animated and happens to be kind of aimed at kids.
I've watched a few of those animated movies where I just want to bash my head against the wall. So it's still happening, but not as much.
Yeah, and it's not like the Shrek sequels where it was like, well, we'll just throw in a bunch of pop culture references and adults will love it. Like, no, they talk about some themes that parents deal with, and not, John just throwing. It's more than just throwing in a catchy song or a reference to the movie Taxi Driver. It's actually, it's more. It's so much more than that, and it's ridiculous because it takes so long to make these movies. I mean, do it right. You're putting so much money and time and everything into it. Just make sure the script is good and make sure the jokes land. It's nice to see them actually taking their time and giving us something that we want to watch. Because we'll watch it over and over again if you give it to us.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think you were touching on the animation before, and I really like how some studios are branching out in their animation styles, because it's almost you can almost support infinite style in these movies. But for with the success of the Pixar movies, the early success of the Pixar movies, I feel like all of them kind of try to emulate that style when it comes to the look of the characters and that kind of thing. Their big glassy eyes and the bright colors and all of this kind of thing. And it's like, okay, well, we get why that's appealing, but there are other ways you could do this, or there's so much other stuff you can do with these characters. And I think the Mitchells versus the Machines was kind of riding that line a little bit. The main characters still looked a little Pixar-ish to me, to a certain degree. But then they threw in all kinds of other interesting flair in the animation, things that we, really don't see in a lot of other movies. And I think some of them are always trying to be as realistic as they possibly can. Let's talk about the ones that are probably the least realistic, but are striving to be so. The Uncanny Valley ones of what was it, Beowulf, and those what's his name, Joe?
Robert Zemeckis did a lot of them.
Robert Zemeckis. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's like you get into those, and it's like they're trying so hard to make them look real that it just kind of makes them even creepier. So, I really like the idea of, like, if you're going to do an animated movie, make it animated. Do something creative, do something unique that we haven't seen before. And I really like that some of these studios are taking a chance on that, and we're seeing things that aren't. The Pixar stuff is great. I mean, there's a reason it's so successful, but I'm glad they're kind of branching out from that. So I give the Mitchells versus the Machines a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. Okay.
And I feel like we reach a place where we're like, okay, we've said enough glowing things about these movies, and we all just got to stop.
Hey, whatever works.
Like really, I was watching them, and I'm like, okay, what are some of my issues after every film that I watch? I'm like, there are none. I adore both of these films.
I guess
the complaint.
Yeah, I voiced one of my issues with the Mitchells versus the Machines in that I think they lingered a little too long on some of the topics or the scenes, but just a little bit. It certainly wasn't enough to make me not enjoy the movie.
Right.
It's still wonderful. Well,
overall, it's going to go really well.
It's going to be hard to choose. I mean, it's hard to choose these. I mean,
agreed.
And I've said it before, I'm sure, we started this podcast thinking we were going to, compare a bunch of really bad movies. And in some ways that might actually be easier except that we have to sit through a bunch of bad movies. We have to spend.
Well,
our
the point
time,
was
our
to
very
try and
valuable time.
find good things about
Good
bad
things
movies.
in these
Right.
bad movies.
Yeah.
But we've shifted a little bit, and we're obviously doing in many cases really good movies, and I think that's extra challenging to go on here and say, I picked this movie over the other one. When I would watch either of these anytime and enjoy it completely, So I think that makes it more challenging for us to make these decisions.
Yep. I think that's totally fair. Unfortunately, because I'm an AI logic bot, you have to make that decision. So, Mike, directing.
Oh boy.
That's not an option.
Oh boy. Okay. I've got to go. I got to go with Brad Bird. So I'm going with The Incredibles.
You didn't sound sure.
I'm not sure. Both of these,
did.
but I'm going with Brad Bird.
Okay. Gabe?
Yeah, I don't think I can vote against Brad Bird in this category at this time. So, yeah, Incredibles.
So him, not the movie, just him.
Yeah, him.
And Tom.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Brad Bird too, because we didn't talk about this, but I don't know if we would have Mitchells versus the Machines without The Incredibles. That Incredibles was such a leap forward in terms of thinking outside the box, and we don't have to make everything look like fucking Bambi, and so I think. It was. I got to give credit where credit's due.
All right. And Kyle.
I feel bad overall for giving a sweep in this category, but yeah, it's hard to argue against Incredibles.
Okay. Sweep it is. You guys are going to love this. So sit back and relax, because this is probably the coolest thing about The Incredibles ever. But we're going to start with the Mitchells versus the Machines. So most of the Mitchell family was actually based on Mike Rionda's own family, excluding the dog, who was just primarily a self-insert character. For example, Rick Mitchell is based on director Mike Rionda's own father, and the aviator jacket in the film is from an actual jacket his father wore when he was growing up. Now, it sort of puts him in the past because the jacket was from the 70s, but he didn't care at the time. Okay, so The Incredibles. This is probably one of the most incredible stories, how The Incredibles got made. So John Lasseter. Okay. John Lasseter actually tried to coax Brad Bird to come join Pixar multiple times, and he started doing that in about 1995. But Bird declined him multiple times. After Bird completed The Iron Giant in 1999 and Warner Brothers failed to properly promote the film, Bird finally agreed to join Pixar. John told Brad Bird to make the film he'd always been dying to make. So Brad Bird had gotten the idea for this movie in the early 90s, basing the story on his own experience trying to balance a career with family. Upon initial presentation of his idea for the film, the top brass at Pixar turned pale and said it would take 10 years and $500 million to do it. So Brad Bird told them to give them all of the black sheep animators, the animators who were malcontent and probably likely to leave, as he knew it would make them easier to test their limits. He proved them all wrong, as the film came in under time, under cost, and cost less than making Finding Nemo.
Oh.
Yep. I heard all that on a podcast about Pixar.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is absolutely incredible that they were like, there's no way that you can make this movie. And even just reading some of the stuff that he pushed them to do, like they hired a seamstress to come in and explain to them how to animate fabric so that way they could get the stitches animated correctly on the close-ups of the costumes.
Right.
Like,
and they accomplish stuff that no one was able to accomplish before in CG
yep.
animation. Like there were a lot of people within, sorry, Andrew, there were a lot of people within Pixar that felt like outcasts because they kept saying, we can do stuff this way. It's easier. And they were like, no, we do it this way. So all those people that were saying we can do it this way went over and worked on The Incredibles and changed Pixar.
Mm-hmm. It's quite incredible. And I keep saying that, but pun is not necessarily intended, but it's there because not only is the movie The Incredibles, there's an incredible story behind it. And actually, after overall, we'll talk about all the firsts that Incredibles did for animation and for Pixar that I think are pretty fascinating. So, yeah, that bleeds us right on in. So, overall,
yeah.
Gabe.
Yeah. Well, wow. These movies, I think we often touch on music in this category because it's one of the few things that's left that we haven't talked about. And I just love the music for The Incredibles. I think it is fantastic. And when I was watching it, I was writing down these notes, and I said it's reminiscent of Bond and Mission Impossible together. I mean, it's very clearly a reference to that kind of stuff, and it's very energetic, it's very grand and very memorable. And I think the music is really just. I think that's one of those things too that just takes it over the top. You know, you've got all of these elements coming together in one film. You know, incredible. God, it's hard not to use that word. Damn it! I need. Oh, okay, I'm gonna Google some synonyms for incredible. Really, really good animation. Really, really good voice acting. And then you throw the music on top of it, and you really can't beat it. Frankly, I'm trying to recall the music in the Mitchells versus the Machines, and I'm sure it was fun, but I feel like it was a little bit more of a pop culture reference type music. But maybe you guys can correct me. I don't know if I remember.
There was a lot of music reference for the time, like the Maya Maya.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you know, the score was all right, but the score for The Incredibles is unbelievable, beyond belief, unconvincing, far-fetched, strained, labored, implausible, implorable, magnificent, wonderful, marvelous, spectacular.
Marvelous. There's one. I like that one. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things I wanted to point out in overall, and I think we can talk about maybe the impact of these films too on the films that followed, the animated films that followed. Like I said before, a lot of animated films from different studios kind of have the Pixar look now, and it's movies like that really have. Changed the course of animated movies. And that's kind of, we almost kind of come to expect that now in animated movies. So, yeah.
I'm gonna pull a mic and interject something. You were talking about some of the greatness of the music. So one of the big things with the music is that the composer actually grabbed a bunch of jazz recorders for the orchestra, brought them into a studio with only 2 microphones, got rid of everything else, and told them just play, and we'll just get it right the first time. And so they actually recorded it on analog, and they recorded it in binaural, so it sounded like the 60s jazz recordings.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of to your homage, of how the music really helped inspire the film, that feeling that everyone's been talking about. So it's kind of neat.
And more than Brad Bird, even I think Michael Giacchino was this is the movie that really kind of set him apart from everyone else and kind of established his style of music. And he's done so much work since The Incredibles, and even going so far, he directed what was the Marvel werewolf thing that came out? Werewolf at
Werewolf
Night.
by Night?
Yeah.
Werewolf by Night.
Yep.
He directed that. And so, I mean, how often do you see composers move to the director's chair?
Wow.
So, no, I mean, yeah, he's just absolutely exploded.
It's remarkable, phenomenal,
Thank
miraculous.
you.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek. He did start.
You're
the
doing
new
an
reboot of
incredible
Star
job, man.
Trek,
Yeah.
Rogue Ones. So
And I want to talk too, at the close. This is silly. I don't want to talk about this, but the closing credits. I think The Incredibles changed what closing credits could be in movies. Like Mitchell's versus the Machines borrowed from it. Lego Movie, the Marvel movies. Thor Ragnarok. I mean, a lot of them go back to this when The Incredibles said we could do so much more, when we're thanking everybody that participated in making this movie. And there's and I'm sure Andrew's going to talk about everything, but that's another thing that Incredibles influenced, and that that ripple from that rock that got thrown in the pond. So yeah, it's a very influential movie. There's no arguing that.
Sound design for both the films I thought was fantastic. Not just the music, but the sound effects and how they were used. I mean, I'm trying to go through to see if there's anything that differentiates one from the other as far as technically. And one thing that I noticed, because I watched The Incredibles first, is there is a larger dad in both films. There is a caring, short-haired mom, right? Or in the Mitchells versus Machines, she kind of wears it up, doesn't she? And then you have the older daughter, the younger son, and then the baby is replaced with the dog, which, by the way, both Jack and I got to remember the dog's name. What's the dog's name? Monchi. Both of them, like, just the parts that they played were great.
Yeah, you could tell that the director or directors of the Mitchells versus the Machines love dogs, because not only is that dog a kind of a main character, but there's references to other dogs. There's the one where they're teaching the dog to speak or whatever. He's like, "Hello, I am dog." And then then the one where the perfect family, their dog is also perfect. It's like super muscular and doing push-ups and all that kind of stuff. So you could tell that the filmmakers really loved dogs and that they were important to the story.
Well, and I also, just the comparison between the perfect family and the weird family, right? Like, everyone thinks they're the weird family. And so, you're always looking at this so-called perfect family. And I thought that was a great way for a great thing to have in the film. I thought it was really funny that they threw that in there.
I think it's, we talk about how incredible Pixar was when this came out and how they were at the top of their game. And it's been kind of sad. I feel like in the last 5 years or so that it feels like Disney has turned Pixar into kind of their direct to video department. Like, their job is just to produce stuff for Disney Plus, and their films are not getting the recognition that they deserve. Because Disney's kind of pushing their own animation stuff to the foreground and leaving Pixar to just, make other movies. And they have devalued the Pixar brand.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, people talk about how much Disney has messed with Marvel and Star Wars. It's nothing compared to what they've done to Pixar. And I don't know, it's upsetting to me. And it is kind of funny now that we're at the end of the year and people are talking about Oscars. And I think the one movie out of the studio people are talking about is Turning Red, which is a Pixar movie. So it's no surprise that they once again have one of the best animated movies of the year, and Disney doesn't really have that really great film to put out for awards this year. So
right.
Anyway, I just wanted to get that out so that I will never be hired by Disney ever.
Well, Disney is, it can be a blessing and a curse. You open up endless an endless money pit, or an endless coffer of money, but then you have to listen to them, right? And I kind of agree with you. Like, I feel Pixar has kind of dropped off, and Disney is okay with that. They're just like, you know what? We have this prestigious name now that's part of the Disney brand, and people will go see the movies as long as it says Pixar, but also they're going to have to make their money back. So here, do these other films as well, like help out with the animation, do whatever. And I think we're kind of seeing that with Marvel and with Star Wars. They're just trying to earn some of that money back that they invested in buying those companies. Because Pixar was originally part of Apple, is that correct? Weren't they?
Yeah.
And then they went out on their own, if I remember, or were they just bought by Disney?
Steve
Apple?
Jobs, they weren't actually owned by Pixar, or they weren't owned by Apple. Steve Jobs was on the board of both of them. And there was talk, I believe, of merger, but it didn't happen. And then Disney stepped in and bought them. But still, I don't know. It's frustrating, and they could be doing so much. Their films deserve better than they get. So, and I love Disney Plus. I love that I get these really kick-ass movies, for free, basically, in my house. But I thought Lightyear was better than it got deserved, and Turning Red was fantastic, and they're still doing some of the best animation out there. But DreamWorks and Sony and Illumination they're not messing around,
right?
So,
especially Illumination. They're really jumping up ahead of the pack.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to give a shout out to was the Mitchells versus the Machines. And it's kind of a throwaway line unless you listen for it. But when the mom is on the phone talking with her, or on the computer talking with her at the end of the movie, she's like, "Are you and Jade coming? Are you guys a thing yet?" Insinuating that she is an LGBTQ. And I think that's fantastic. And I didn't catch it the first time I watched it. And I caught it this time, and I was actually going through to get my quotes right. And of course, there are pages on there talking about that line and saying how it's awful that they put it in kids' movies and everything. It's like, you know what? I'm not even going to get into that argument because they're wrong.
Yeah.
But I thought it was great. I really had no problem with it whatsoever. And I actually felt better. I didn't feel good about myself, but I was just like, oh, that's really great. Just when I caught it.
Yeah, and it was subtle.
Yeah,
and,
it wasn't like they were
big deal out
cramming
of
it down your throat,
it's not some sort of big deal. It's just who she is, and you realize that it had no bearing whatsoever on her character throughout the whole movie.
None.
It didn't matter. It
just incidental to the character.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was thinking when I was like, oh, here's some quotes, and then I just saw it was someone that was quoting that movie in whatever article that they thought that they were going to save humanity with. And I'm just like, why is this even a thing? Why does this bother you? Like, it has no impact on the film whatsoever. So, yeah.
Very stupid.
I just wanted to bring that up. Kudos to them for putting that in there, and I think it's great.
I think the shocking part of this movie is that they said kids should be fans of Taxi Driver. That's dangerous stuff. That's dangerous stuff. You grow up and you end up making the Joker if you do that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Be careful. Be careful, kids. Don't let them tell you that Travis Bickle is someone to idolize.
Right, right.
Are you talking to me?
Just, I'm telling anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you got kids. You got to watch out. These kids are all. They got Travis Bickles in their school telling them what to do. They got Jodie Foster's coming around, and they're really putting it in the heads of the youth.
They're what?
There were two Utes.
Utes.
I know. I heard you the first time. I'm just being a jerk.
The two Utes. To me, this is what this stupid "they're ruining children" discussions sound like.
Yeah.
Oh, right, right.
It was.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say it was a big deal for Abby Jacobson, who voices Katie, because she's actually gay in real life.
Oh,
yeah.
And it was huge for her to actually be able to have that kind of expression, but not make it the center point of the character like a lot of people try to do.
Right.
And she felt that was really awesome that they imposed that through the small nudges without actually being like, hey, I'm gay, by the way.
Right. So that makes me even weirder.
Yeah.
You know how they always say we're
so stupid.
Yeah. So
I wanted to point out too, whoever decided to have the brother calling people in the phone book to talk about dinosaurs.
Oh my
That's
God.
some shit your kid's gonna do, Mike. You got to be careful.
Amanda was home working today, and she's sitting there eating her lunch, and I'm watching the movie. And she goes, "Oh my God, that's going to be Liam."
Absolutely.
Things that kids can't actually do anymore. Go through a phone book, and randomly call up strangers.
Oh
and she goes, "It's even in the case."
I'd just be like, yeah. Let's
talk about dinosaurs.
Yeah. That sounds like fun.
I hear about dinosaurs a lot. I mean, a lot. Whether it's true or it's fan fiction, I hear about dinosaurs a lot. And I love it. I just let him go.
That's awesome.
It's great.
All right. This is your chance. Sounds like we've pretty much loved these movies to death.
These movies are great. Watch these movies.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So it's the hard part. Here you go, I guess. Gabe, can you actually pick something or?
Yeah, I don't know if I have any really good reasons to choose one over the other. I think I'm gonna have to give it to The Incredibles.
Okay. All right, Tom.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Incredibles.
Kyle.
Boy, howdy. Just by the sheer joy I felt of surprise and seeing a movie that I wasn't expecting to be great, I'm going to go for the Mitchells versus the Machines.
Okay. And Mike?
Yeah, this one's difficult, but I think I'm going to go with Kyle Logic, because when I saw the commercials for this, I was like, this will be something that Liam can enjoy watching, and Amanda and I'll probably end up doing housework or something. And then all three of us are sitting there watching it because, we didn't know what to expect. So the Mitchells versus the Machines.
All right. Oh, boys. So while our little exciting AI monkeys do some math, because they may be AI, but they're really slow AI still. So we're going to let them do some math. I'm going to tell you guys some really kind of cool, fun stuff. So the Mitchells versus the Machines, there's the one family photo that Rick really likes. It's the real life photo that came with the frame.
I love that gag.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it was required that the producers to hire 3 different private investigators in New Zealand to be able to track down the models that were in the stock photo. Ultimately, they were unable to get permission for the original photo, so they had to spend 6 days finding a replacement.
Wow. So they had to get permission from the people in the stock photo?
Right, because they didn't have rights.
They couldn't just buy the stock photo from like.
Well, no, they got to
Go
have
to
the rights.
Getty
It's
or
totally
something
different.
and buy it.
Buy a photo.
Yeah,
I'm guessing they had to get releases from the actual models.
That's my
themselves.
guess.
And
they were playing it safe.
Yeah.
Why not
Okay.
Why not just like go and get a family and be like,
Yeah,
smile?
and do it. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
I saw the list of production babies. I know you made some.
So The Incredibles is a movie of firsts. We've talked a little bit about a lot of that stuff and some of the incredible things that The Incredibles actually did. So here is the things that are a first for The Incredibles and a Pixar movie. The Incredibles is the only Pixar film to be written by only one person. It is the first Pixar movie to be set through the human perspective. It is a first Pixar film to not receive an Oscar nomination for its music. It is the first Pixar movie to win it. Right.
It didn't.
That's
did not.
ridiculous.
With that
Interesting.
fantastic, marvelous.
It was the
music.
first Pixar movie to win an Academy Award for Best Sound Editing, however.
Yeah, some of those scenes, those action scenes, especially the one like where they're flying those things through the forest going after, the boy. Fantastic
Great.
sound. Yeah,
Great.
The first Pixar film to be rated PG and to be produced in an aspect ratio of 235 to 1, because all of the other previous films were rated G and they were in 185 to 1. It is the first Pixar film composed by Michael Giacchino, if I'm saying that correctly, who also then later, because of this, later composed Ratatouille, Up, Cars 2, Inside Out, Coco, and The Incredibles 2. It is the first and only Pixar movie not to feature the distinct appearance of the Pizza Planet truck.
Oh,
This,
yeah.
this was the first film by Pixar whose lighting was actually designed with a new system called Lipix. It was a design developed in-house that allowed the lighting designers to be able to view and make changes in a tenth of a second to be able to show new images so they knew the lighting was correct. Previously, it took the studio 2,000 seconds, that is 33 and a third minutes, to change the lighting in one frame of animation.
Oh,
yeah. I think
sounds
animation
awful.
would be. Yeah, I think animation would be fun and creative, but at times it would also be the most painful thing you could do. It just, even with this technology, it still takes forever.
Well, I mean, there are stories of like on Monsters Inc. That they went through and they did big renders of like Sully's hair,
Right.
and they would let the machines render it overnight, and they would come back in the next morning, and somebody happened to do something just wrong, and they would get this random bouncing hair and weird stuff happening, and they just wasted an entire night that they would have to completely re-render.
I remember
Yep.
I remember seeing that in the theater, and when they get thrown out into the Arctic,
Oh,
Yep.
and Sully's laying face down in the snow, and the wind is just blowing the fur on his back, and I just shook my head. I was like, I can't believe they can do this now.
Yeah, how can they do that? Oh, and that's one thing I noticed in The Incredibles this time is one thing that maybe they probably have improved upon over time is that their hair when they after the plane crash and they were in the water.
Yep,
Their
that seems
their wet hair wasn't that convincing.
no. That had like a hadn't been rendered look to it.
right. But that
Yeah.
was
That
that
one
was
scene in the water. You're right.
That was one of the things, though, that they had to pioneer as well. Was the
Oh,
wet
I'm
hair.
sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was probably just unheard of at the time.
Right.
But seeing it now, we're so spoiled now.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Because of them and all the stuff that they've done, we're so spoiled now. That's one thing that stood out to me is that the wet hair didn't really work that well, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's a lot better nowadays.
And like I said, that earlier they brought in costumers to actually teach them about the stitches, so they could render on the close-ups of the clothes the stitches correctly. That had never been done before. No one ever had been that detailed. So it's kind of cool to know. It's very incredible.
It's really hard not to use that word, isn't it?
To know all of the incredible things that they actually did for not only Pixar, but animation in general.
Yeah, for sure. And the technology, yeah.
And the fact that it was the cream of the crop, basically. It was the top bottom tier group that they were like, these guys can't really do anything. And Brad Bird was like, give those guys to me. And I think that's amazing. So always root for the underdog, I guess. Okay.
Oh, yeah. When they produce this kind of stuff, yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Are they done? Yeah, we'll move on to recommendations and keep everybody in suspense because I think one guy's, I think he's cheating. Yeah, they're playing with not a full deck over here. Now, I'm sorry, but I want to make sure that this is right. So they're recounting right now. So Tom, give us our recommendations.
All right. So, and speaking of pleasantly surprised by animated movies, I'm going to recommend Puss in Boots: The Last Wish that just came out into theaters a few weeks ago. It got really good reviews, and that's usually the driving force to getting me out to see something. It's the voice cast is Antonio Banderas, of course, Selma Hayek, Florence Pugh, Harvey Guillen, Olivia Colman is in it, and the wonderful John Mulaney, stand-up comedian. That's fantastic. It's a great voice cast, and it's not an animated movie just for kids. I laughed so hard. I think I might have even embarrassed my kids. That it's a really fun, delightful movie. You don't have to see the first Puss in Boots movie, which I heard is not quite as good. But when people say the Shrek universe, I kind of shudder a little bit because they did not get better with age. But yeah, the new Puss in Boots movie, highly recommend. It's very, very funny. Take your kids, take your parents.
Very cool. All right, Gabe, you're up.
Well, I'm going to go with a pretty straightforward one. I'm going to recommend a movie that I saw again just recently on HBO, and that is the Lego Movie. You really can't go wrong. I just, and I'm gonna ruin the next few days for you guys. Are you ready? Everything is awesome.
No.
Everything is cool when you're part of a team.
Everything is awesome.
See, now your next few days are ruined.
When you're
jokes on you. Jokes on you. It was already stuck in my head.
Yes, and that song often comes to mind when I think about working with you guys on this.
Oh my!
Everything is awesome.
Oh, Gabe.
Everything is cool
charmer
when you're a part of a team. So, I know it's probably an obvious choice for an animated movie, but man, talk about great performances. A lot of great voice performances. Super fast paced, just throwing jokes at you like at light speed. And it's just a really fun movie. So go get that song stuck in your head.
Gabe, I hate doing this to you, but you miss a huge opportunity. Oh, everything's incredible. Everything's incredible and part of a team.
Yes, we can tie them together. And I guess that's one of those movies too that I'm sure it has its lineage in Pixar movies, but the characters look a little different because they're the Legos, and that's one of the refreshing things about it too. Well, they're really creative about making everything look actually like Legos.
Well, and the great thing is too, like there are shots that you're like, are those actual Legos?
Like, yeah. That might be somewhat to a certain degree. That might be to their advantage, because I think animating, mechanical and inorganic things is a little bit easier than animating, organic things with hair and muscles and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's there's some really, really great animation in that one too.
I love how that movie addresses the philosophy of playing with Lego.
Yes.
Like on a whole, like not only is it a fun movie that's made out of Lego, but it's also here's another way you can play with our toys. Another anime movie they put plenty of thought into.
Yep. Good pick. Kyle.
So we were talking about the wonderful Olivia Colman, and it got me thinking about a really good show. I know we sometimes get a little squeamish about recommending shows, but there is a British show called Peep Show that she is in, and she is just wonderful. And we talk about her being known more for comedy in Britain. She also did, with the same group of guys, she did a show called Mitchell and Webb Look, where she does some really goofy, strange shit that you cannot imagine Olivia Colman doing. So it's really awesome. You should definitely check that out if you are a fan of hers.
Excellent.
She gets really, really silly.
And she seems like actually a really down to earth, fun person. You know, when you see her, she doesn't. You know, some of those characters she plays are kind of stuffy and aristocratic. You know, but that you don't get the impression that she's really that way.
Good choice, Mike.
Oh boy! All right, so I had two choices just in case someone picked one of them. This is a movie that I may have seen at least a dozen times because I have a 5-year-old. But every time I watch it, I catch something different. It is an animated superhero film. It is done by Disney. And it's about a special bond that develops between a plus-sized inflatable robot and a prodigy who together team up with a group of friends to form a band of high-tech heroes, and it's called Big Hero 6. He loves Baymax, and in fact, if you ever do go up to him and try to give him a fist bump, it is going to be fa-la-la-la, and not a true explosion, but it stars voicing the characters. Ryan Potter, Scott Adsit is Baymax, Jamie Chung, TJ Miller. I'm a huge fan of Alan Tudyk. He does a voice. Maya Rudolph does a voice. Aunt Cass and Damon Wayans Jr. And, of course, James Cromwell lends his voice. But I really do like that movie. It comes pretty close to me to these two films that we're talking about today, as far as it is very compact story. It deals with an adult subject for kids. It is about loss and how to deal with loss. And the musical score is incredible. So one more time. So yeah, check out if you haven't checked out Big Hero 6, please do.
Furry baby.
Like when he's drunk, when Baymax is drunk and low on power is still hilarious to me. Oh, and real quick, Tom, talking about laughing so hard in a movie you embarrass your kids. So when Shrek came out, another friend and I took our friend's little boy to go see Shrek because they were both working. And there's a part in Shrek that still kills me to this day. And it's when Shrek and Donkey come up to the castle and the guy runs between the velvet ropes. I was on the floor. I was laughing so hard. I had tears in my eyes, and I am starting to hyperventilate because I just lost it. I lost it. And I just remember getting up and looking over, and Jonathan is just sitting there wide-eyed staring at me like, oh my God, Uncle Mike died. So yes, I've been a part of that.
It's like what was the zoo Disney movie with the
Zootopia?
sloth?
Yes.
Zootopia. The sloth scene. I'm pretty sure the theater wanted me to leave. I was laughing so hard. Oh my God. So my recommendation is actually probably not like the best, like necessarily kids animated movie. The story is not really unique. It's just kind of okay. The reason I'm recommending it though is because the animation style, and for the fact that it was made in 2001, is quite incredible. And I don't mean The Incredibles.
Did it again.
It is unbelievable, let's say, that they did this in 2001. It is also made by Sony. It is the first CG movie that I watched that made me go, I want to do more than just make live action movies. And that is Final Fantasy. And again, not probably the best story or anything like that, but the animation and the ability that they did with humanistic behaviors, movements, texturing, and lighting is beyond anything you've ever seen. And now remember, 2001, this was unseen. And it's quite incredible just for that aspect of it. So it's one of those things that I always tell people to watch, but ignore the story because it's kind of goofy. But the movie itself, the CG is just...
Agreed about the CG, but yeah, it was being called Final Fantasy. It comes with a certain expectation.
Yep. Well, it was a Sony property, and so that's why they did it. And again, if you ignore that part of it and watch it just for a movie, think about the fact that this is at the very, very beginning of computer animation. What they pulled off is absolutely astonishing.
Yep.
See, didn't do it that time. All right.
It's incredible you didn't say that.
I know. Right? So one of the little AI monkeys came over. He handed me a sheet of dot matrix paper. Looks like, yep, printed straight off. And in I thought
I could hear that in the background.
Yeah. In a very close. This was pretty darn close, actually. We have.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is The Incredible!
What that part of that was the directing. The directing got the clean sweep, and that just pushed everything over the edge. Otherwise, we would have been at a tie because we're tied otherwise.
Yeah, I really can't wait to see what the two directors of Mitchell's versus the Machines do. I'm kind of excited, and I want to see more Brad Bird. But yeah, I'm really excited about those two guys.
Netflix is too.
Yeah,
yeah. They've already talked to the director and the writers and everything about doing a sequel. So
that'd be great.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I got the impression from the little bit I read about the Mitchells versus the Machines is that what studio started it? Was it Sony that started it? And then they're like, the pandemic hit or something, and then they're like, we can't sell this, and they just gave it to Netflix? Is that how it went? Something like that?
It was supposed to be released in theaters.
Yeah, it had a different name, like Disconnected or something.
Yeah. Connected, Control-Alt-Delete went around for a while. Yeah. And then it was supposed to be released in theaters, and then the pandemic hit, and they were afraid that it wasn't going to go anywhere, so they struck up a deal with Netflix, and Netflix changed the name back to the Mitchells versus the Machines.
Yeah, and it's too bad because it really is a great movie that I think probably didn't get enough attention.
Sure. Well, here we've done that for them. So there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, they're gonna get the Cinesmack bump.
Yep. Woo! My mom is totally gonna watch that
movie. Well, on that note, we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on Google, iTunes, or whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach our new listeners. And if you like us, listen with your friends. If you hate us, tell everybody, including your enemies. And, we pretty much want any emails or comments that you guys would be willing to give us. You can even have any of your AI devices write to us. Just make sure that you thank them if they do that, just in case of the uprising. You always want to be polite to the AI now while you have the chance. So you can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search for Cinesmack. For February, we remodel love with 2 mansions in just 2 weeks. It's Money Pit versus War of the Roses. For Tom, Gabe, Kyle, Mike, and myself, your under AI overlord, thanks for listening, and go catch a flick.
Honey?
What?
Where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Put it away.
Where?
Why do you need to know?
I need it.
Don't you think about running off to doing no daring do? We've been planning this dinner for 2 months.
The public is in danger.
My evening's in danger.
You tell me what my suit is, woman. We are talking about the greater good.
Greater good? I am your wife. I'm the greatest good you are ever gonna get.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.